Just be here now.
Before we begin, I just want to give you an update on our joint venture. Congressman George Miller, who is a really good environmentalist, by the way, he just got caught between a rock and a hard place, and he's the head of the committee that would take the land that the WIP site is on and transfer it from the Interior Department to the Department of Energy. And once it was there, they could open it without permission of the EPA and its standards. So it's hard to say that we did anything by, we certainly upset them by about 800 phone calls, but they have spoken to our representatives, the Washington office has, and the California office. And this bill, which was to be marked up this week for quick action, has now been delayed indefinitely. Let's understand, it's not that we don't want WIP to ever open if it can be opened safely. Let's just keep our priorities before us. Good evening. Shall we just spend a few minutes getting here? Perhaps a few deep breaths. On the out-breath, letting go of any tension. On the in-breath, drawing in that which is light, that which heals. We come together again under this circle to counsel with one another. And to find a quiet place inside yourself from which to hear the fullness of the moment. We come together to understand reaching out, coming together. listening. We're coming together to understand the place from which we can act, where our acts heal. We're coming together to share an exploration towards truth. A man in the USSR goes to the river to fish. He throws his cigarette in the water, and the river explodes. True story. The topic we're talking about tonight is one that I find perhaps the most difficult. Because it's hard to know what to say or what to think or what to feel or what to do. I don't know about you, but I would like very much to hide my head and make it all go away. Tonight we're talking about ecology and the environment and the imperative that the situation places upon us and what we're doing about it. As a child spending the summers in New Hampshire by a lake, I remember the feeling of the pristine quality of nature. I swam in the lake, I drank from streams. There were thousands of birds in the trees. By the time I left that place in New Hampshire, some 35 years later, most of the birds weren't around anymore. You could swim in the lake, but there was garbage in it, so you didn't certainly want to swallow it. And you didn't drink from the rivers and streams anymore. And I remember feeling a kind of a sadness for something that had been lost. When I traveled a lot, and I used to have a private airplane, I'd come to Los Angeles and everything, the sky would be blue and the sun was bright and it was clear. And I would look down as I came in over the basin and there was this thick yellow, mustardy looking fog, smog. And as I landed, I'd get burning sensations in my eyes. And then once I went to the mountains to be quiet for a week, and I remember I was in the flight path, apparently, of the airport. And every few minutes there was this raucous sound. And then I realized I flew an airplane. And I was one of those raucous sounds. So I stopped flying. And then I, like you, have dealt with the garbage strewn on the beaches of New Jersey and New York, Long Island, with 3 Mile Island, with Chernobyl. Do you know it's going to cost $386 billion to clean up Chernobyl, let alone human life? You can't put a price on that. That's 14% of the gross national product of Russia. And as I felt all these feelings in myself, and then when I pick up the newspaper and start to read the statistics, the rate at which trees were being cut down, in 10 years, as much tree surface has been cleared as is the United States east of the Mississippi. And how much desert has been added? The amount of desert that's been added is equal to the arable land in China. And how much topsoil has been lost? One equal to the topsoil that India uses for all of its production. And there has been an addition of 1.6 billion people in the last 10 years, which is more than there were in the whole world in 1900. And there will only be 4/5 of the species by the year 2000 that there were in 1980. I feel a little bit like I'm living in the middle of a science fiction story by Gibson or by Bill Burroughs. It has a feeling of cold harshness, as if, is that what we human beings do to it all? Going into inner cities like Detroit or parts of New York and just seeing building after building boarded up, deserted, thrown away. Behind it all is the tyranny of a set of ideas. Core ideas which we built our reality on. Ideas of anthropocentrism, like we're the center of it all, after all. Ideas that we as individuals should get what we want, at any expense. That our satisfaction should come in acquisition and in ownership. A meditative friend of mine, Christopher Titmuss, just sent me his new book. And I opened the introduction and it said, several years after giving a public talk on engaged spirituality in Madrid, I spoke with a successful and unhappy businessman resident. He had a yacht, a holiday villa on the Mediterranean island, was the owner of several factories and perhaps the largest car in the capital. He told me, The purpose of society is to produce and consume. All human activities are subservient to this core idea. There is money to be made in every human activity. Fashion, the latest gadgets, the newest style, and subtle refinements of technology ensure the continuity of this momentum. And he invited him to become president of the board of the directors of the Earth Island Institute. And he is with us tonight, and maybe he can talk to us and help us understand where we are. Carl Anthony. Carl, you heard my confusion and my pain as a human being, and I'm sure I speak as part of all of us. What do you want to tell us at this point? I mean, you're somebody thinking about these issues probably most of the time you're awake, and we ask your counsel now. You want me to start more like, what's your name sort of thing? Or I told him, see, he said he didn't want to know the questions.
I share very deeply the stories that you told, the images that you brought forth. And I feel myself, with everyone here in the audience, to be on a journey. And as I listened to the images on the screen, I most identified with that fish that found herself in a pool of mud on the beach, and therefore needing to undergo some kind of change to get to the other pool that was quite some distance away. I'm really very pleased to be associated with Earth Island Institute and with David Brower and with all of you and with the people who were here. I have come to the struggle as a person of color. I don't have the privilege of being an indigenous person, because many of my ancestors were brought from the continent of Africa not by choice. But I also have other ancestors who came here from Europe by choice. And I also have other ancestors who were the indigenous people here. And so, for me, what is especially challenging and especially wonderful is to listen to these different voices in myself. And I think that, in a way, we all have those voices. We all were indigenous to some place. In California, many Native Americans in California are really immigrants to California. They are indigenous people in the United States, but they've come to Oakland because of the uranium tailings on the Navajo reservation, or because there's too much candy being sold or too much alcohol being sold, or there's no opportunity for them on the reservations where they are. I don't really know whether it's true, but I suspect that some of my ancestors were on the Trail of Tears that went from Georgia to Oklahoma. So what I see is really immensely a source of potential enlightenment, and I don't know whether the catastrophe that you described is really the catastrophe of one fish finding itself in a puddle, and so we each need to make this discovery one by one in the middle of the night, or whether it's a big bang and the whole thing goes up. But as a person of color whose ancestors for 12, 14 generations have been taught to believe that people from Europe really know the answer, it's refreshing to find out
A little scary, isn't it?
that we actually have some responsibility here. And the responsibility that we have is to assume, let's say, a shared effort in guiding us toward where we have to go. And I think, as an African American, this is something that is sort of, we're not comfortable with that quite yet, because we are used to the idea that you guys figure out what the answers are. And then when you get it figured out, let's see, we represent 12% of the population, so we want 12 positions. And whatever the answer is. So I think what we have to all do is we have to try on different hats. And I think that some of us, as African Americans, need to try on some visionary hats and see if we can maybe come up with some images. And many people are already. Maybe we can come up with some images. And we need to do this, I think, with a humility, because we know that that we may be wrong, or that what we put forward may not work. But at the same time, one of the wonderful things about ecological diversity is that it's beginning to teach us the importance of human diversity. And therefore, there are secrets that are known by those people who have not been in the council. And we need to discover those secrets, and we need to see what they have to teach us. As an African American whose ancestors came from the American South, it has disturbed me, but it also has encouraged me that when we look at the problems of environment and ecology, that we have a whole history and a whole region of the country which has been totally invisible to the environmental movement. And that background and that history, I mean, after all, the American South was the first underdeveloped country, is an important resource for us. So I would say that I am really happy to be here to learn with everyone. And I think, as an African American, again, I do believe that the principal position of the indigenous people is really perhaps the most important thing. That we all need to find ourselves in a position of following those who have been truest to the land for the longest period of time, where they are. And to me, if, as an African American, coming from an urban tradition, we can position ourselves as people who are capable of learning from indigenous people, that maybe we can all make the transformation that we need to make in the generation ahead.
Carl, talk a moment about the relation between urban ecology and things like rainforests. How do I conceive of the link, and how do you put your juice into urban rehab? And tell me about that.
Well, the urban environment is the place where the most dense collection of human beings is. So when we talk about a forest is a community of plants and animals, of which maybe some people say the dominant species are trees. One could argue that the city is a place where the dominant species is human beings. I doubt if that's true. There are probably more rats and roaches. But it is a place where we are together. And it seems to me that we have, if we care about the rainforest, if we really want to do something about those regions in which human beings are maybe not so present, that we should go about healing those places where we are present. And as I look at Oakland, I see really wonderful opportunities for healing. We have opportunities for healing between people of diverse cultures. We can also bring wilderness back into the city. We can open up the creeks. We can stop eating up the farmland around Oakland. We can stop building suburbs. In fact, we could put a national moratorium on paving. I think that would be a wonderful thing to do. So I think we have wonderful opportunities. I also believe that the people who are the poorest. I listened to Winona LaDuke about 3 weeks ago, a Chippewa leader, indigenous woman, and she said, well, you know, people talk about indigenous people as if they are passé, or as if, Their culture is gone. When we talk about sustainable living, we're already doing this. The indigenous people in this country are already doing this. And the same, in many ways, can be said for poor people. If you live in the suburbs, you consume 200 gallons of water every day. If you live in the city, maybe 40 gallons. If you're homeless, maybe 5 gallons or 2 gallons. So we have something that we could learn from those people who are poor, because they're not the ones that are creating the problem with the ozone layer. They're not the ones that are creating the problem with the rainforest. And so maybe if we really learn to treat people who are struggling with minimal resources with dignity, we might be able to find a path toward living on less resources themselves.
Boy, you're bringing together so many threads of this course that we all can feel in our hearts. How do you say to somebody that says, what do I do? What do you tell them? Is it not a thing I mean, what I say to people is, get all the information and then listen to your own heart as to what you do. I don't know what else to say. But where are we? I mean, is it too late? Should we do something? What is the feeling? What kind of where do you
came
play?
into my mind, which may not be relevant, but there's a statement from the Bible that says, "Physician, heal thyself." And I would say that we really do need to do exactly what you've been teaching, which is to find the harmony within ourselves and our being. Because if we operate from a place of lack of personal balance, then there's no way that we can possibly bring harmony into our surroundings. And this is very difficult. And I certainly feel that it's a worthy journey. In my way of thinking, that there really needs to be a balance between finding that peace within oneself and then acting on the external world to test what we've found. So I'm not so sure exactly that it's about going around collecting aluminum cans and putting them in bins. That's certainly part of it. And for people who are at that place, I'm not so sure that it's exactly about buying the right type of toilet paper. But I do believe that each one of those little steps is a step perhaps toward a different kind of consciousness. And I think we each really each know where we are. Each of us knows where we are. And if we take the time to listen to those small, quiet voices that tell us, rather than the big advertising signs, I think we may be able to be on the journey. I think it might be a good idea to ban advertising for 5 years. And then
You know, it's interesting how the problem lies with the people who seemingly won in the society, and the answer lies with people who seemingly lost in the society, or at least part of the answer. And I can feel the place in me that hears what you're saying, and in my other category, I have my MG and I live in Marin. And, you know, I think this isn't good. I got to do something. But what am I going to do? Take my sleeping bag and become homeless? I mean, I just want to share with you that letting go of something that you've spent your life being taught is who you are is a very interesting edge that we're being called upon now. And only when we connect with the deeper part of our being, when we see we aren't any of these things. Like, I go to India, and I live in a village where you're sleeping on the floor, you're eating the same food, rice, and the indigenous vegetable every day, and you've got dysentery probably, and you're washing in the public well, and I feel a sense of well-being and a feeling of connectedness. And I'm amazed at how simple it can be, and how much I forget it when I get back into this culture. there was this bizarre moment. I shouldn't do this, but it was too good. There was a bizarre moment when I was in a railway station in India, and I was new on the path, and I was barefoot, and I had long beard and beads, and I was very holy. And I had just been told that the train was to be 2 days late, and India's railways are pretty good, actually, but this was one of those things. And I was sitting on the railway floor, marble floor, with people with babies and goats and chickens, and we were all just sitting there, and it was going to be 2 days. And I had dysentery, and the only latrine had overflowed some 6 months earlier, probably. And there were a lot of flies. And now I was brought up in a very middle-class environment. I mean, I was well toilet trained. I really was. And, you know, I went through all this, and I sat there, and after I got over the shock, I realized I was happy, and I said to myself, you can't be happy at this moment. There's no way you can be happy. And I think that's sort of what we're playing with, is the edge of a change of lifestyle. We start in with things like voluntary simplicity, but we can feel that it's more interesting than that, that there are, I think John's right on, that there are values that once we reconnect with them, which is often through spiritual process, then you can give up stuff so easily. So easily.
Yeah, I think there really is this confusion. Marin's a pretty county. I mean, at least
Isn't
parts
it?
of it are.
Yes, I don't want to put down Marin. It's
right.
very pretty. Yes.
But I think there really is this confusion between, what shall I say, having a BMW or an MG or whatever, and well-being. And I know that when I grew up in Philadelphia, it was really very easy to knock on the door next door and ask for a cup of milk or, an egg. I find that very hard to do now.
Interesting.
And so what I see is that there's really a window of opportunity here to actually improve the quality of life, to improve the communication between people as we get rid of some of these things or leave alone some of those things that are not giving us the satisfaction that we need. And I think we should embrace this window of opportunity. I don't feel pessimistic about this. I feel really optimistic. The wonderful thing about necessity is that it forces you to do what you really should be doing. And so in a sense, I don't feel the desperation, really. Personally, I don't feel the desperation.
But I just want to ask you, are the cues that we're going to get to change that going to come in a timely way for the nature of the degradation that's going on? Because, when the water runs out in Marin, everybody becomes very friendly. But the water's run out.
I think that's true.
And I'm asking, how long along the way do people say, hey, let's learn a different style of life?
Well, one of the things that's really wonderful for me, being at Earth Island Institute, I've had a long history and experience as an architect and as an urban planner, struggling for social justice. And I've come to the conclusion that the protection of the environment, restoration of the environment, and social justice are really intimately connected. They really can't be separated. What gives me great pleasure when I go over to Earth Island is that every day I talk to people who care about the turtles. And this is not a place that I thought I'd ever be. To me, I think what I try to do, and I think what each of us tries to do, is to align ourselves with the best in the environment that we're in. And so, for me, I would like to say that I'm trying to align myself with the best of everything that's in my environment and also in me. And I would say that for everyone here, as you look around, people and plants and animals in various communities, that it really is fairly simple. Align yourself with the best in all these different people. And part of it really means getting rid of or getting away from or not relying on so much of what we have assumed as part of our consumer culture. So I feel really pretty optimistic that as the signals begin to come to us, that we will be able to make the adjustments rapidly. I hear it, I see it every day, You know, 2 years ago, I got in a big argument with the man, Jan Lundberg, about whether we should have a moratorium on paving. And today, it really seems really simple to me that makes good sense. And so I do think we have the time. I think if we listen to those small voices in us, we do have time. That's my sense.
Ladies and gentlemen, will you join me in thanking Carl Anthony, extraordinary being. Thank you. Oh,